welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to help you answer the question, should I remove my amalgam fillings? So if you've clicked this video, you probably have amalgam fillings. You're also probably trying to decide if you should have them removed. Now, if on the off chance you don't know why amalgam fillings are bad, I'm just going to walk you through in 30 seconds why they are so bad for the body. So first of all, amalgams are an amalgamation of different metals. Some of these metals can be heavy metals, things like tin, arsenic, and primarily mercury. Having these metals in your mouth, anytime you're producing acidic saliva or anytime you drink anything acidic, like fruit juices, like coffee, anything that has an acid, or especially something that's a hot acid, so coffee is a really significant one here, you're going to be releasing these heavy metals, especially the mercury, from these amalgam fillings. This forms a vapor that you then inhale or swallow, and you're basically constantly exposing yourself to toxic heavy metals. Also, having metals in your mouth, especially if you have more than one, creates a battery-like effect. And we are electromagnetic beings. There is a study of the teeth where we can look at the reflexology of what different teeth connect to different organs and systems in the body. And when we have metals in our teeth, we create this battery-like effect. It influences the subtle energies of the body and can cause disease and dysfunction in different organs. I'll show you a little chart on the screen now. You can see which teeth are connected to which organ system. And it wouldn't surprise me if you are experiencing some symptoms in some of the areas connected to teeth that you have particular problems with. This doesn't have to be necessarily amalgam fillings. This could be dental infections. This can be teeth that tend to develop a lot of cavities. But once you see this chart, you'll never be able to unsee it because there's definitely a connection. So now to answer the question, should you remove your amalgam fillings? The short answer is yes, but the long answer is it's a little bit more complex than that, and we have to make sure we do it in the right way, in the right order. So before you get your appointments booked and you're going in to get the removal procedure carried out, there are a couple of prerequisites that I would suggest. Because when you have these drilled out, you are going to expose your body to an extremely high dose. Even if this is done perfectly, even if this is done extremely well, you are still going to expose your body to a very high dose of extremely toxic chemicals. Smart dentistry and the infrastructure that's built around appropriate and safe amalgam fillings removals will still expose you to a higher dose than your baseline. So it's really important that we have you in a strong enough and resilient enough place that your body can handle this extra stress. So first of all, I would say, if you're in an active state of crisis, if you're somebody that's dealing with like wild reactions, panic attacks, if you're frequently questioning going to the hospital, the emergency room, if you have multi-systemic dysfunction in your body, if literally your daily existence is this constant fight or flight, you are absolutely not in the right place to do amalgam filling removal. You have to find some stability first. You have to address some of these multi-systemic dysfunctions. We need you in somewhat of a resilient place before we're able to work on something like this. Being in an active state of crisis is not the time to remove your amalgam fillings. So assuming that you are not in an active state of crisis, I would suggest that you build up some supports so that your body is going to be able to handle this extra toxin load and the stress of potentially anesthesia or the painkillers or the antibiotics or whatever things you might have to be on as a consequence of doing an amalgam filling removal. So assuming you are not in an active state of crisis, we want to make sure that your body weight is pretty good. You definitely don't want to be doing this if you're underweight. We need to make sure your BMI is at least in average, ideally, maybe slightly above. This means that your body has the raw caloric resources that it needs to heal itself and to withstand this kind of stress. The second is that we want your gut to be in a pretty good spot. Now, I'm not saying it has to be perfect. In fact, having a perfect gut with amalgam fillings is tricky because the constant dripping of toxic materials into the gut creates SIBO and gut dysbiosis, irritates the stomach, creates gastritis, reflux, and different type of acid problems. So I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but ideally you would be tolerating some level of probiotics and fermented foods on a daily basis. I would say ideally at least 100 billion CFUs of probiotics on a daily basis, whether that's coming from fermented foods or a probiotic supplement. The reason being your microbiome is the thing that protects you the most from toxic metals. It would also be really good if your leaky gut is down to a minimum. And I'm not saying it has to be perfect. You know, leaky gut is not a black and white thing. It fluctuates day to day. But we want to try to make sure that consistently you're having quite low levels of intestinal permeability. Because if we release all of this mercury and you swallow it, if it doesn't absorb into your body, there's no harm. It doesn't matter. And if you've got a strong microflora and a very low level of permeability, the amount that you're going to absorb is thousands to tens of thousands times less than if your gut is all leaky and you're full of gut dysbiosis and your mucosal integrity is just very weak. So if your gut is in a pretty solid spot, your body is well nourished, your intestinal permeability is low, and we've got some probiotics loading in there, the next thing we're going to want to do is work on your antioxidant status. We want to try and make sure that your glutathione levels are high, your immune system is functioning very well, and you're going to be in a spot where we can afford to put all of this extra load on your body. I have a whole video that elaborates on the concept of antioxidant loading. I'll stick it somewhere around the video, probably up here or over here somewhere, if you want to look at that more in-depth video. But to summarize what antioxidant loading is here, is to work through implementing a couple of different modalities that support the antioxidant status of the body. The first being grounding, using a grounding earthing sheet whilst we sleep. Then we can layer in some more holistic antioxidant practices, things like juicing. Then from there, we can look at adding some more isolated nutrients that really help to boost the antioxidant status. Things like vitamin C, alpha lipoic acid, N-acetylcysteine, things like that. And then finally, we can bring out the big guns. We can look at using glutathione and even IVs of these things like Myers cocktails and things like that. But it is a progression, and I would recommend you work through it in these steps. If you get to the point where you're at the end, you're doing the full antioxidant loading process, and you've done all of these prerequisites, not in an active state of crisis, have a good body mass, and your body is well nourished, your gut is functioning fairly well, and your antioxidant state is great, at that point, yes, you should remove your amalgam fillings. Your body is ready for that extra level of acute stress so that in the long run, we can reduce the toxic burden to your body. When you do decide to go ahead with working with a dentist to remove your amalgam fillings, make sure they know what they're doing. Make sure they're specialized in safe amalgam removal. There are a couple of different options here, one of them being a smart dentist, but what you really want to be looking for is a dentist where they're going to be damming up your throat. They're going to be using a vacuum filter to be sucking the vapor out of your mouth as it's happening. You want to make sure that the substance that they're going to be replacing the amalgam with is as non-toxic as possible. Now, I know that some of them have these polycarbonate or these seemingly plastic-based resins. Again, these are not ideal. Some of these can be connected to different types of autoimmune problems. I'm not a holistic dentist. I actually have pretty great teeth. I've never had any significant dental problems. So this is definitely not my area of expertise. But what I would say is, if you're getting your amalgam fillings out, make sure you're replacing them with something that is non-toxic, because it would really suck if you take your metal fillings out and then you replace them with some kind of plastic composite that develops into an autoimmune problem. So just make sure that whatever you're replacing it with is a safe material. And that is something you should talk about with your dentist, because they know more about these kinds of things. Just make sure that it's a biodentist, a smart dentist. If you talk about this with mainstream dentistry, they're not going to even understand why mercury is toxic. And whatever they're going to replace them with is definitely not going to be good. You have to make sure you're going to a place that specializes in biodentistry. And yes, that probably is going to cost you a little bit of money as well. So you have to bear that in mind too. And once you've finally had your amalgam fillings removed, I wouldn't actively do any mercury detoxification for the first 6 to 8 weeks. Let your body do what it wants to do. Your body is smart. If you've done all these prerequisites, if your gut is in a good place, if you've been doing antioxidant loading, this is more than enough to give your body the stability that it needs. You could consider using digestive binders, so things like activated charcoal, but I wouldn't be taking any kind of chelation therapies or things like zeolite, binders that are really aggressive, come into the body and start pulling the mercury out of the tissues. Chlorella, other things like that. I would not be using those just yet. Give your body some time, be compassionate, and understand that this is a very intensive process for your body, and just give it the resources that it wants so that it can do what it wants to do. Because in the end, it's your body that does all of the healing, it's your body that does all of the detox. And knowing that, that is why it's so important that we build this framework out first before we go in and do something that is realistically quite an aggressive treatment or medical intervention to the body. So I hope that answers that question for you. I hope you feel like you're a little bit better equipped to deal with your dental situation. And just a little note before I finish, I know of plenty of people that have made a full and complete recovery. They still have amalgam fillings. I'm not saying it's ideal, but what I am trying to emphasize is you don't have to be perfect to heal. If you can provide your body with the microbiome that it needs, the antioxidant status that it's asking for, the nutrients, it will do an absolutely incredible job of withstanding all of this external stress. So if you are in that active state of crisis right now, don't run off and get your amalgam fillings removed. It could be one of the worst things you ever do. Your body's not in a state where it can handle that kind of toxic load right now. We need to be gentle, we need to be kind, and we need to be patient, because that is what healing is. I hope it helps. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.